Good day, everyone. I'm happy to be here to present on using after action reviews to learn and improve our project implementation. My name is Abolade Oladejo, and I work with the Johns Hopkins Center for Communication Programs on the Breakthrough Action Nigeria project as the Senior Documentation and Knowledge Management Officer. It's a pleasure to be here presenting at the Community of Practice meeting to all of you. So, what is an after action review? How many of us have usually come up with the best argument or the best things to say after an argument with someone, and we discover that we actually have better points than we put forward at the time of the argument? Oh well, it has happened to the best of us. So, for an after action review, we wouldn't want that to happen on a project. We want to continue to improve, and that is why an after action review is an intentional reflection by members of a team that recently conducted an activity. Because that activity would happen again, so we need to get better at it. That essentially is an after action review. It's a systematic process to document learnings for improvement on subsequent implementation of such activities, so that we don't have that voice in our head saying you could have done better again. So we have done the what and the why. However, when you want to conduct an after action review as well, you need to have some key questions that you should ask so that you can get the best out of your learnings. Some of these key questions include what we wanted to do, what we actually did, what were the results, and what caused the differences, what went well, and why it actually went well, what did not go well, and why it also did not go well. So, for next time, what would we do differently? On the Breakthrough Action Nigeria project, we use after action review a lot. The team found it very useful after a project wide knowledge management training, and it helped them to highlight the fact that it's something that they have always been doing, but we're not systematic or intentional about it so as to document their learnings for others to use. So it's been a lot of tacit knowledge, not translated to explicit. For this particular example that I'm sharing, it's about how we deployed mobile curriculum to our community volunteers during the COVID era. That's the first wave. So we wanted to train these volunteers via interactive voice response to engage community on priority behaviors in the context of COVID. The reason we had to do this is because we work in about 12 states, and only 3 states were doing this in the first phase. The approach will be used for refresher training subsequently and would also be done in the remaining 9 states. So it was essential for us to learn what the deployment of the first phase was like. After the deployment of the first phase, which had about over 2,000 community volunteers trained, the participants, which are the people that are involved in the planning and implementation of this activity, came together to conduct the after action review process. So first of all, we shared an online Google form with the key questions that we shared in the previous slide for everybody to document their thoughts and opinion about the deployment of the mobile curriculum. Then we selected a note taker and a facilitator. A note taker and the facilitator were both not involved in the planning and conducting the activity for the sake of objectivity. So before that session was conducted, the knowledge management team analyzed the form responses, which is practically the process for all the AARs we've conducted. And then we use the findings from that to facilitate discussions around that particular activity. The findings from the form, the conducted session was also now used to develop the AAR report, which was made available to everybody on the project in case you're planning to deploy a mobile curriculum to our community volunteers. So what were some of the key learnings that we had on that particular deployment? We discovered that random time allotment to CVs did not help to get the best out of them because some of them were given times that were not convenient for them. A lot of them had inaccurate phone numbers in the database. They also did not have a mechanism for feedback because it was done through IVR. So they had only one mobile phone line, which was deploying the IVR. There was no two-way communication. Apart from the responses they have to key into the IVR. The mobile curriculum content itself had a lot of technical languages, and there were areas where there was no mobile network reception for the participants to be able to access the curriculum at the set time. So, what are the things that we came up with as suggestions to address this? We arrived at providing specific time slots for the CVs, that's the community volunteers, to pick so that they pick the convenient times for them within a specific range. We also had a central phone database where we assigned people to update on a regular basis so that it's not when the mobile curriculum is being conducted that we have to update this. We also had a separate phone line for feedback so as to establish a two-way communication. The team was also advised on revising the technical languages to a simplified language so that the CVs can easily relate. And then the state teams were deployed to identify mobile network dark areas so that the people within these areas can be allowed to come to non-mobile dark areas for them to be able to access the curriculum. Well, if you are planning an after action review, there are key considerations to make. Just as you would have seen in my presentation earlier about the example that we had and the introduction to AAR. Facilitating, timing, and reporting are quite important. For facilitating, you need to have an external person to facilitate the AAR. You also need to provide clear objectives of the AAR from the beginning during the discussion session so that people are aware of what is expected to come out of that discussion. You also need to ensure that everyone is listened to carefully, allow everybody to have a voice. Then establish recurring patterns during the discussions and in the form so that you are able to collate common themes and responses. It's usually best to stick to a maximum of 1 hour 30 minutes, and it's best to also conduct the AR immediately before people start forgetting about the activity. More so, you have to allocate time to each of the questions in the AR form. For the reporting, allow for review of the initial draft by everybody that participated and write the report in bullet points to avoid information overload, so that you can also finalize the report in time before the next similar activity occurs. For people to buy into making AR a culture within an organization, they have to find it very useful. So teams will request for ARs if the reports are very useful to them. So during the discussions, find the unspoken learnings. In the responses in the forms, find the unspoken learnings and hammer on it. Then promote previous AR reports by sharing widely within the organization rather than just to the team that requested the AR. This will motivate other teams to also want to request for it. If an activity is most likely going to repeat itself, yet it is not a routine one, suggest AR to the teams involved rather than waiting for them to reach out to you. This would help to imbibe a culture of pausing and reflecting using AR as an example within our organizations.